Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode of the Powered by Iron Health podcast. Today I have a special guest, Stanford native, Brendon Gaydorus. What's up, man?
I'm doing incredible. This facility right here, it's been cool to see it a couple months ago when it was just opening up, and now it looks polished, and it's such an incredible view here up by Prime. I mean, I'm excited to be here today.
Thanks, appreciate it. So we have an interesting story too, which we can dive as like how we first met. And I guess why don't you lead it off? You know, let's start, highlight it there, and then we'll dive into your story.
Yeah, so I have events, and a lot of people are like, Brendon, how do you meet so many different people? Well, I learned early on that where the people are, the opportunities tend to arise. So we actually met at the line. I met you and your wife at the line of an Ed Milet event, and it was his book signing. And my goal was to interview my dream 7 people last year, and Ed Milet was on one of them. And our mutual friend Rob, he goes, dude, Ed Milet's having a book signing and you could meet him. So I was like, it was 2 tickets for like $3,000, and he's pretty much the only person I know that would do that right on the spot. Mm-hmm. So we split it, and we went down there, and we both knew that we would be around like-minded people. So we just went for it, and right away, as soon as we walked in the line, we met you and your wife. I saw Ken Jocelyn there, who ended up coming to my conference. I saw Jen Gottlieb there, who was one of the top female public speakers in the country, top public speakers in the country. And I'll never forget her saying that day when he was saying, voice out your goals. She's like, I want to be one of the top female public speakers in the country or in the world, something like that. And then a year later, I got to actually have a conversation with her and really see where her head was at with that and how much she progressed even from just that year alone. So we were in the room with a lot of very, very high quality people. I was sitting next to a lady who Ed wrote the intro for her book, and she had a really big following. So yeah, I learned early on that where the people are, the opportunities arise. And I think bars get too much of a negative reputation because of the stuff that typically happens there. Yeah. But there are so many opportunities at those different places, whether it's a bar, whether it's at a networking event, whether it's at a restaurant, to be able to meet people. And specifically, if you go to events like that, where people are invested in themselves, it's a personal development event, you're probably more likely to meet some awesome people like yourself. Yeah,
for sure. And for me, that was like one of my first events ever, honestly. And I was like, whoa, there's a whole nother world out here where I can meet people who are like-minded, because you feel like you are on an island, right? Like you feel, man, what's going on? This is there's a lot of stress on you, but once you start meeting people who are going through the same thing, it really opens your eyes to what's possible, which is really, really cool. Yeah. So let's start with your story. You have this book here, The Ultimate Golf Fitness Program. Now, how did you really facilitate and get into golf and training golfers? What does that trajectory look like for you?
Yeah, so I had always been interested in golf, and I don't know if it was getting told no or it just sparked my curiosity because my dad played. So he still plays, but when I was 10 years old, I remember he wouldn't let me go on the course. He's like, you're not ready. You can go to the range. And we would go to the range, and I loved it. So I started playing quite a bit, 8th, 9th grade. That's when I started taking it seriously because I could go play on my own. Mm-hmm. I never cared if there was a lot of people playing with me. I loved being out there. And when I was 17, I actually met a physical therapist. My mom got me this golf fitness eval for my birthday. Mm. And it was very interesting because he gave me a golf fitness handicap. And it was like 26, which if you don't know golf, 26 handicap, that's quite a bit. Yeah. So he's like, hey, you're a little tight. You don't move as well as you should if you want to play competitive golf. So I said, all right, well, give me some stuff to work on. And he gave me a whole routine to work on. And I went from not being able to touch my toes to being able to touch my toes. Like that test in gym class where you had to like sit down and then reach towards the box. I was never ever even close to that. And he taught me that you could actually reverse that if you move your body and you move it often.
Yep.
So it's funny how that works.
Who knew, right?
So I had already committed to go into school to be a golf pro, but the fitness side was what interested me. I didn't want to be a physical therapist like he was, but the fitness side really interested me. So I pursued the golf. We would do an internship every year. And my first internship was at a golf course. I was working in the pro shop, was working outside, I was caddying, pretty much everything. They let me try experience everything. But I had no idea what it was like to be at a country club. And it's funny because when I was towards the high school era, my dad actually joined a country club, but there was only one country club in the area. And I was the furthest thing from a country club kid because I was the kid that like would want to wear tennis shoes to the course and stuff like I didn't know any of this stuff. And my dad grew up in a small town, so even though he just recently joined one, there was just so much stuff that like it wasn't rubbed off on me like, hey, this is how you dress, this is how you do this is how you do this. So when I got to my first internship, I was at a world-class course in New Jersey. And it was such a wealthy town. It was right on the water. Bruce Springsteen lived there, like people like that. And I had no idea how to iron my clothes. I had no idea how to cut my hair. These things sound so simple, but I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I had no idea how to actually talk to people. I didn't know a lot of this stuff. And even though I showed up for work every day, I actually almost failed that internship. And it had nothing to do with my work ethic.
Wow.
And what was tough is my boss wasn't there for about a month out of the 3 months because he had just qualified for the top tournaments in the country. He was playing with the top pros. There's 4 major championships in golf, and he made 2 of those that year as a club pro.
Oh, wow.
So here I am, working for this guy who's one of the top playing club pros in the country, which is unheard of. But he's not there because he's playing in these tournaments. So then at the course, everybody's stressed out and everyone's just trying to get through the summer. But from an internship perspective, some of the learning gets kind of faded away and put on the back burner. So I didn't learn that much. And I got a D on the internship. They passed me, but they said, you barely did good enough. And I actually had a talk with the pro after, a couple months after, and he said, listen, to be honest, I'll take responsibility for that. Like, I wasn't there for a good portion of the summer. There's a lot of stuff that I could have done better. There's certain things that you could have done better, but you can work on all those. I was like, oh, okay. So my next internship, I said, I'm going to give golf one more shot, and then I'm going to switch into fitness. But the only reason I wanted to give golf one more shot is because I wanted to make as much money as I could and prove to myself that I had a good work ethic and I was good for a company. And the crazy thing is, not only did I get an A on that internship, I had made more money than probably all the other interns in my grade, but I gained a mentor. And that mentor is still my mentor to this day, and he was actually on the cover of one of my books because he taught me how to take care of people, which is something that I just had never learned in high school growing up. And it's something that I still, to this day, make sure that I implement the things that he taught me. And that's when I started transitioning into fitness that next summer.
Okay. So you said something there that I've never heard was you went to college to become a golf pro. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah. So like the golf pro that work at the courses.
Yeah.
So like in Arden, I just play golf there on Saturday. My buddy's the head professional there. So Wingfoot, one of my good buddies is one of the pros over there. So I went to school where people who work at golf courses typically go to.
Interesting. So
you still have to pass a playing test, but it's not like the PGA Tour.
So in this school, though, what do they teach you? Is it just you're on the course all the time?
Well, you're getting a business degree.
Okay.
So they're teaching you business. You're getting a business administration degree for the one I went to, but you're learning operations, you're learning leadership, you're learning golf cart management, you're learning maintenance, like on the golf course. You're kind of learning all these different things that go on to operate a golf course. You're learning teaching, how to teach people how to be better golfers. And it just wasn't me. It wasn't me, but the fitness side really interested me. So I started getting certifications. There was this thing called TPI, Titleist Performance Institute. My sophomore year, I got certified. And people at school were like, hey, can you take me through an eval? Can you take me through an eval? So I was like, sure. I just paid for the certification, might as well start using it. And then that next summer, I did an internship at the #1 gym in America, Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning. And for those of you who don't know what Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning is, Mike Boyle, the year before, won a World Series with the Red Sox. He was with the Boston Bruins pretty much all throughout the 90s. In his gym was the USA Olympic girls hockey team. There was pro athletes from football, baseball, hockey, golf in the gym. I'd never seen anything like this. Massive gym up in Boston, Woburn, Massachusetts. And there was 25 interns.
Wow.
But since I was used to internships, I said, can I start early? I started 4 weeks early, and the interns had started leaving early who were there in the spring. And I had a huge opportunity. I got to spend 4 weeks there before the 25 interns came. And I really got to learn very quickly because of that. And then after that, I started a program at my school, and the rest was history after that.
That's cool. For you to go to Mike Boyle's gym, and that is a big deal, right? Like, he's known in the U.S. What was that process like to get that internship?
Yeah, well, I was fortunate. I had a guy who came to my school when I was 20, and he said he wanted to be the best in the world at what he did. So he wrote down the top 10 people in the world at what he wanted to be the best at. And then he learned, observed, shadowed, studied, and met all 10 of those people.
Wow.
So I was like, well, why don't I just do the same?
Yeah.
So I put that together for golf fitness trainers. So after I started putting this list together, I shadowed Binghamton University during my winter break. And the lady there, she was like, hey, Brendon, this is great, but a lot of our students aren't in session right now. When you go back to school in North Carolina, you should reach out to the big 3 universities and see if you can do the same thing. So I reached out to Duke University. The guy's like, sure, come on up.
Yeah.
So I'm driving up there at 4 a.m. in the morning, and he introduces me to the golf coach, the entire golf team, lets me shadow the workout. He made me feel very welcomed. He kind of made me feel like a celebrity. I'll never forget that. I'm like this college kid who's just trying to learn, and he's like, hey, I want you to introduce yourself to Brandon. We're very fortunate to have people like him wanted to see what we have going on in our program. Never forget that.
Yeah.
And he spent like the entire day with me.
Wow.
So then I was like, well, why don't I take the lady's advice and reach out to UNC and NC State? So I reached out to Al Vermeil, who was the strength coach for the Bulls in the 90s, because he was on the TPI board. And I sent him an email, but I put my number in there. I said, hey, I would love to learn from you, blah, blah, blah. He calls me out of the blue. Like, he just called, he's like, I don't respond to emails.
Wow.
And I picked up, and he said, where do you live? I said, North Carolina. He said, oh, one of my interns is the University of North Carolina basketball strength and conditioning coach. Well, you should go shadow him. So then next thing I know, I'm going up to University of North Carolina, and I'm shadowing the men's basketball strength and conditioning coach. Very cool. He said, hit me up after the NCAA tournament. I'll spend some time with you. Spent like 3 hours with me. And so I'd studied Binghamton University, Duke University, and UNC, the basketball strength and conditioning coach. And on my top 10 list, there was this guy, Randy Myers. in Sea Island, Georgia. He was the number 3 guy on my list. And he was the first guy that I reached out to after the top 10 list. Followed up with him. Like, he responded back that I didn't hear back, that I followed up like at night. And then the next morning at like 6:30 a.m., he says, hey, are you free in 15 minutes to talk? And I just happened to see the email, and we talked for like 15 minutes. He told me everything I needed to do to be successful as a golf fitness trainer. And so before I had even gone to Mike Boyle's strength and conditioning, I had done all those. And the Duke University coach, he interned for Mike back in the day. So he told me, he said, you got to go there. Mm-hmm. And it was crazy because after all that, I had not only him as a connection, I had another connection. I still didn't get the internship at Mike's. And I followed up with the internship director. I said, hey, I have to do an internship this summer. I'm just trying to get an answer. And he said, all right, we're not going to give you housing, but we'll give you a spot. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll figure that part out.
Yeah.
and that's how I ended up going up there. And I was hooked. I'm like, man, I got to keep learning from the best. And then the next summer, I wanted to go work with pro golfers. So I went down to West Palm, Florida to work for David Donatucci, who was working with Brooks Koepka, Daniel Berger, Michelle Wie, Stacey Lewis. And if you don't know who they are, that's totally fine. Just picture some of the top up-and-coming talent in the world. Like Brooks Koepka is one of the top golfers in the world now. He was probably 24, 25 then, and wow. Just starting to make it on tour. So it was really cool to be able to see that for 7 months. And then eventually I got an opportunity to either stay down there or move up to Greenwich, Connecticut, where I would have more freedom to do what I wanted to do, which was I wanted to train people. And it wasn't that I didn't want to have a boss, because I wanted to have a boss, but I wanted to have freedom of programming. I wanted to feel what it was like to have to get clients. And I had that opportunity come up here at a gym that had an indoor golf facility, but was letting me personal train. So I was able to keep my PGA professional certification while still doing what I wanted. So I was able to stay in the golf business while still doing what I wanted to do, which was work with golfers in the gym.
That's awesome, man. That's a story of resilience. You know, before we dive into your tenets of training golfers, how did you learn how to reach out to people and be resilient? Was that just always in you, or is that something that you had to foster over the years?
I think learning from someone who did it gave me the confidence that it was possible. And I think getting a couple wins early on was like, I'll still remember sitting there with my mentor, the number 3 guy on the list, Randy Myers. And I was like, how can we find his email? I want to work for this guy. Because I wanted to work for him. I didn't end up working for him, but I wanted to work for him. That's why I was trying to reach out to him. And just knowing that someone had did that and the success that that guy had, I was like, you know, I want to chase that. Because I didn't love golf fitness. I was curious about where I could go with it, because I saw something that I was interested in. And it gave me something to pursue, because when I was 20 years old, that's when I realized this top 10 rule. And the first guy I had the phone call with was Randy Myers. 6 years later, I was on the same list as him for top 50 trainers in America.
Oh, wow.
For golfers on Golf Digest. And I was just so fascinated, because every time I would meet someone like the UNC, the Duke, Randy Myers, Binghamton University, just someone who was in the shoes that I wanted, I was learning so much. Because in school, I was so frustrated with learning stuff that I didn't feel was applicable. I got okay grades, I passed. Like, for me, school was always easy. I wasn't a 4.0. My dad said keep above a 3.0 because you keep your scholarship. Mm-hmm. So I had about a 3.1. I didn't care about school, but I loved learning. And when I started getting a couple emails back, when I started to see, hey, when you go to Duke University, now all of a sudden you're seeing the best. And now you know how to apply that. And then when you're applying that to the people who are trusting you in the beginning, the golf coach at school, he said, because I was training one of my friends. He said, who was one of the best players on the team. And he said, dude, whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. Mm-hmm. And it was crazy because our last year at school, he got second in the national championship and led the team to the national champion. Like the team won the national championship. So I was kind of addicted to the feelings I was getting from learning from the people who had what I wanted and then applying that and how much that was accelerating things. So the no's, even though they were hard, they didn't matter as much because the yeses were leading to so much opportunities. But I look at my email because I wrote a book called Skip College, Read This, where I actually talk about how to reach out to people. Mm-hmm. And I look back at my emails from 10 years ago when I started doing this, and they weren't that great. A lot of the stuff I tell people not to do, I was doing that. But the key is I was a college kid who was hungry to learn. And a lot of times people could feel that in the message, even though it wasn't that good of a message.
Yeah. So how did you craft your message now? Or like what's some bullet points from, what did you say? Yeah. Skip this, skip college?
Skip college, read this. So if I'm sending a message right now, I'm trying to not make it as much about me. Like I'm trying to let them know that I appreciate them and respect them. And then make sure I'm acknowledging their business or what they do. And then just get right to the point. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm reaching out because. And since I'm not a college kid and I have a business now, I don't get as many responses. But when I was in college, like if you're in college, don't be afraid to take advantage of people really want to help you. Like they genuinely want to help you. So if you just ask for the help, then you'll tend to get it. A very successful person who I've become very close with over the last couple of years, $100 million plus company. He said, Brendon, and he said this at my conference, he said, Brendon, I think what most people don't understand is that someone who's had success genuinely probably wants to help the person who wants it. It's just hard for them to know that that person wants it, because someone who's successful, the chances are they've probably tried to help so many people achieve that same success that haven't listened. Mm-hmm. And you could relate. You've had a lot of success at what you do. And think about how many people that you want to help that just aren't ready to receive it. So if you're ready to receive it, it's so much easier for someone who's had this success to be able to give you that advice. And you go from there.
Yeah, that's great. So you got to want it. That's like the first step there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and the reach outs, make it known that you want to learn. You appreciate what they've done, and someday you want to be in their shoes.
For sure. So when you started to really take off in the golf training realm, what was your principles, or what are your principles for training golfers and really addressing their movements, their strength, etc.?
Yeah, so actually I wrote a book like 5 years ago that ended up selling, surprisingly. But I look back at it and I'm like, oh. So before I kind of retired from the golf fitness business, I said I need to put out one more good book. And so in the Ultimate Golf Fitness program, we really simplified everything. Mobility, and then activation, and then strength.
Yeah.
So it was pretty simple. And then power depends on the level that you're at, but in a general book, I just wanted to simplify it. But yeah, move your joints the way that they're supposed to move. You don't need to increase the mobility, you just need to prime it. And then, hey, let's get some activation going. Let's get the tissue temperature rising. Let's make sure that we can prepare the body for the stress and the demand of the workout, aka warm you up. And then, okay, let's move. So with the mobility, there's 3 planes of motion. There's the sagittal, which is forward and back, and then there's the transverse, which is the rotational, and then there's the frontal, side to side. So the mobility is very simple. The mobility is those 3 movements with the lower body, those 3 movements with the upper body. It's not overcomplicated. So if you're interested in exercise science, that's about as simple as movement can get. Now, with the warm-up, I like to do, okay, let's do a core, so like a plank. Let's do hip activation, and then let's do some type of coordination. So like a bird dog, skipping, something like that. And then let's add a power exercise in there if they're ready for that. Mm-hmm. So one day you'll have a linear one, then another day you'll have more of a lateral warm up. So that way we're getting both sides. And then with the strength, your upper body, you either push something or pull something. So you can do horizontal or you can do vertical. So we divide that pretty equally in there. And then there's different core exercises that I believe is the third part of the upper body. Now with the lower body, you got knee dominant movements where you're bending from your knee, more like a squat. And then you got a hip dominant movement where you're bending from your hip. So like a glute bridge, a deadlift. And then the accessory is like the Achilles and calf. So, and then the accessory for the upper body is the rotator cuff. So we'll typically pair those in circuits, upper body, lower body, accessory, upper body, lower body, accessory. So it's very simple, years and years of studying the best, and I try and simplify it so that other people can take this, because I believe someone who's interested in golf fitness, or quite frankly in sports specific training, can take this book and apply it, and in 3 years be just as good as it took me in 10 years.
That's great. And I think simple is a really important thing, but simple, not easy, right? It's not easy to do these things consistently. When you look at a golfer who's coming in to train with you, or used to come in to train with you, do you have a specific assessment as well? Like, what are specific things that they need to look at or be aware of?
Yeah, so along my ride of my top 10 list, my first book, I had an opportunity to shadow an eval with Dr. Greg Rose. So Dr. Greg Rose is one of the top, if not the top person in the golf fitness world, the Mecca. And I got to shadow him taking a pro golfer through a workout. Totally random, because I was meeting with the band guy. So I'm the Superflex band guy I became tight with, because I wanted to figure out a way that people could work out on the road. Mm-hmm. So I was meeting with him at the World Golf Fitness Summit, and then he said, you know what, I'm working with this pro guy. I can't meet right now, but you can come hang with me, because we're about to get an eval from Dr. Greg Rose, but you can like come and shadow. So here I am shadowing a PGA Tour player, Greg Rose, and then with the band guy who I really respect, who is also a golf fitness top 50 trainer. And so I saw Greg Rose do an eval that day, and he did the FMS first, then he did the TPI, then he did the TPI power testing. So I had the power testing certification, so I had done that for a while. I'd done the TPI, but I liked how he did the FMS first, because he was actually one of the founders of FMS, even though he's not really marketed as that. So I did FMS, then the TPI movement eval, and then the TPI power eval. That was my pecking order.
Yeah, that sounds an extensive eval. How long does that usually take?
About an hour. But yeah, if there's 2 exercises on FMS, like I really studied the FMS a lot. If people are limited or very asymmetrical in the shoulder test, and then the lying hip flexion extension test, I forget what they actually call it, but where you're lying on your back and you raise the leg up, then all the other evals could be technically a little bit offset. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people I would just take through the FMS. Yeah. Because I used to study this guy, Charlie Weingroff, and he basically said the reason you're taking someone through an eval is to see if they're good to train. Because if my philosophy was that how I was taught is if you take someone through the FMS and they have pain, then you refer out to a physical therapist. So that, or a chiropractor. That's why I always tried to stay connected with PTs and chiros, because if someone had pain, that was not my job. I'm supposed to get that cleared by a physical therapist or chiro, and then they say, hey, Brandon, this is what you can do or you can't do. Because I think I had a chiro tell me this one time. He said, no, it was a physical therapist, because I shadowed a lot of physical therapy and chiro appointments in my day. And the physical therapist said, yeah, you're the one who knows exercise is better than us. She said, this is what this person can do. This is what that person can't do. And it's true. I understood movement very well. So I wish more medical professionals understood the value of a trainer, because if you just told a good trainer, hey, this is what this person can do or can't do, they could help with the rehabilitation process depending on where they are. As you know, there's different steps, but I mean, having learned from Mike Boyle and David Donatucci, I understood the progression of rehab. Because I don't think many people, if any, worked closer with the medical professionals than them. So it was always very fascinating to take people through that eval and say, hey, you know what? You should actually go see this person. And it seemed like they actually gained more respect for you when that happened, which was very rare, but it did happen.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point too, with the communication between a medical practitioner and a trainer, because exactly that, like a trainer's there to train them, a medical practitioner's to get them out of pain. And I feel like sometimes we muddle the lines, or we don't have that cohesive connection, which is something that we can always get better at, right? It's so true.
Yeah. You know, I truly believe that trainers and medical professionals should 100%, like, I feel like there should be more networking events for trainers and medical professionals. When I say medical professionals, I'm talking physical therapists, I'm talking chiropractors, I'm talking surgeons. All of those people, I feel like, should get together more often, just like insurance agents do and mortgage brokers do, real estate agents. I feel like those people should get together more often. If I pursued the business side of fitness, that is 100% the way I would have gone, is kind of having a place where all of those stuff is there. And we've had conversations about that. That's why I really like what you're doing, because I just believe that if everyone was on the same page with that, we would have a healthier America.
100%. Let's backtrack to the FMS, because I know you said it in passing, but if someone doesn't know listening what that is, like, how would you describe that test?
Yeah, so the functional movement screen, it's seven different movements with the entire body, basically making sure that you can move through those 3 planes. You're testing your mobility, you're testing your stability, and then there's 3 more additional ones that are just a pain or no pain test. So for me, it was just a great, like, okay, are they good to train or are they not? And Charlie Weingroff was the one, and Ellie Gilbert, Ellie Weingroff now, who I used to work for, they were very keen on me using the FMS. So I owe them a lot of credit, because at Mike Boyle's, the FMS was factored in with the movements, which was very cool. So he had a lens with the FMS, but in the group training, we never even eval'd anybody. In the one-on-one, they would. But they're like, we don't need to eval people because we do the FMS correction exercises in the warm-up, which I just thought was fascinating. So I never really liked to tell someone, hey, this is what's wrong with you. I'm just like, hey, you're good to train. We're going to work on this. We're going to work on this. And you should be in some of the best shape you've ever been in.
So FMS to you is really the bottom of that pyramid as well. And then the next step is the TPI, and then TPI power. So what do those two really look at? And those are specific for golfers, right?
Yeah. So you're looking at more specific golf movements. Okay, what is the actual trunk rotation? What is the exact hip internal and external rotation? Because that makes a big deal. Like, even if you're not giving them exercise, you're telling them, hey, if you open up your foot in your swing, that's going to help increase your hip internal or external rotation, depending on where it was. So, and then the power test, I could take people through the power test. It's a vertical jump, it's a chest press pass, it's a shot put. And then there's another one that I didn't really do that much, because it didn't tell me as much. It was just a seated overhead throw, laying on your back. But those first 3, I could pretty much tell how far someone hit the ball just based on those 3.
Interesting.
And I used to do case studies on that in college. And then we would go to the swing speed monitor and we would test that out. So the power testing was very fascinating. Like, if I worked with pro golfers, I would be doing that with most of them, because if you can hit the ball farther, it's a huge advantage.
Yeah, especially at that level, right?
Yeah.
Very cool. So now take me through, you have this assessment, you have this flow going. This is what, you're not doing this currently, right? Or are you still training people?
Nope. So I'm doing full-time personal development now.
Nice.
So I teach a public speaking course, and then I do business consulting.
Okay. And what brought you to that route? Like, why were you like, you know what? Training golfers has hit its pinnacle.
Yeah. I mean, at 26, I got voted top 50 in America. I had been in Golf Digest. Shortly after that, I got in Golf Digest again for an article. So I kind of been doing the stuff I dreamed of. I was working with some of the top golfers in the area. Obviously, I wasn't working with a ton of pros in New York, Connecticut area, but like the top amateur golfers, I was working with them. And I had seen what it was like to work with Brooks Koepka, even though I didn't train him, my boss trained him. I was right there. Yeah. So I'd seen that side of things. Eventually, I started doing stuff with PGA of America. I was writing articles for PGA of America. My book was selling. I was speaking on some of the top golf fitness stages, and I just wasn't fulfilled. I was just like, this just isn't, I don't know, it just wasn't doing it for me. But I think it was because I did a lot of the stuff I wanted to do. I chased a dream for about 10 years. And my mentor said, you do things in about 5 to 10 year increments in your life. And it was either, okay, I pursue the business side of this the next 5 to 10 years, or I continue doing this while I build my dream project up. So I was 26 years old, and I was either going to go work, maybe I was only 25. This was before I got voted top 50. I was going to go work for my mentor down in North Carolina. And it was either go work for him or go on my own. And I thought about it for a week. 4 days was go on my own. 3 days was go down there, work for him. And I told him that, and he said, well, typically in these situations, I would recommend going with your gut. And I have a lot of respect for him. So I ended up hiring him as my business coach. And so he helped me get the ball running with the fitness side of things. But even though the fitness side of things was going good, I had to make a decision. Do I scale this where it's not just me, or do I try and pursue this bucket list business? And for me, pursuing the bucket list business was just giving me so much joy, because the reason I got into golf fitness was because of personal development. I saw something that I could get better in, that I could help people with. So the pandemic really helped me out. I kept doing my golf fitness business, but I would start doing things on the side for the other one. So I started a mentorship internship program for high school and college students. I probably took 60 to 80 people through that, and over a 2-year period. And then I had my first personal development event in October of 2021. And that's when things kind of started kicking off. My mentor's like, hey, you're ready to start teaching a speaker school. People are like, hey, when's the next conference? And things started taking off. But in the meantime, I was still peaking in golf fitness. So I had just come out with my third season of a YouTube show with Lauren, who I co-authored the book with. We had just wrote the book. I had just got in PGA.com. Not only in their articles, but on their Instagram. And I was like, okay, I got to make a decision right now. And my mentor said, you got about 30 to 90 days to market or decide if you're going to be the golf guy or if you're going to be the personal development guy. So even though I had been it'd been like a 3-year plan to get out, it was about a year ago where I said, okay, I'm done. And I stopped marketing myself as the golf guy, even though my business was doing fine. Because I was still training people, but I had started building the other business, and I finally started getting revenue coming in for the other one. And then eventually I had my third conference this year, and about a month after that, I just kind of I got a referral list of trainers, and I told my clients, hey, in 2 weeks, I'm going to put all my time into my other business. And it was hard, but at the same time, I feel like I was doing them a disservice if I stayed, because my mind was constantly on my other business. I was surprised at how supportive my clients were of my other business. I had one lady, she bought 30 tickets to my first conference.
That's
for
awesome.
People who couldn't afford it.
Wow.
And it was just amazing to me how supportive my fitness clients were of this. So that was kind of a sign to me that this is the right move to make. And I did it, and I got no regrets, because now my revenue for this business is pretty much where I had it for the fitness business. Now I have a plan to really increase that and grow this into the biggest education system that America's ever seen, where we have 10,000 student universities across 10 of the best cities in the United States. And I'm able to reincorporate a lot of the stuff that I learned early on, and a lot of the connections that I made early on, from fitness to nutrition to leadership development, and all these different things. And I'm super excited about the vision of that, and the people that have grown together with me and with Warm Heart Life along the way.
Awesome. So Warm Heart Life is this business. That's the aspect of it. So when you say you want to open up schools, like, what does that look like?
So the goal is to have 10,000 student universities, and to have 10 of them across the United States. So like maybe one in California, Arizona, one in Florida, Nashville, Carolinas, all over the United States. And that's my goal over the next 8 years and 5 months, is to put that vision to life. So the thing that is going to separate us is we still want the in-person experience. There's always going to be virtual components of everything, but students actually live there. And we partner with the businesses in the area, and the students are working probably 25 hours a week while they're going to school. So I only need them like 5-10 hours a week in school. I don't need them much. But in that 5 to 10 hours, I need to make sure that they're having stuff that they can apply in their everyday job, and the conversations they're having in their everyday life. So we're going to do different things, or we plan on doing different things, such as, instead of being revolved around sports teams to fill up arenas, we have Fired Up Fridays, where all the students come to the arenas, and people who grew together with me along the way share their stories and inspire the students. And different things like that, to be able to create the excitement around this atmosphere.
Is the curriculum all personal development?
Yeah. We're ways away from figuring out exactly how that's going to work. If you were to ask me that 2 years ago, I would have said it's the curriculum I put in Skip College, Read This. But it's going to be forever changing. Like, things are going to be changing like crazy, but it will be revolved around personal development. And then their specificity of what they want to do is going to happen at work. So if they want to be a physical therapist, they're going to spend 25 hours at a physical therapist practice. And you may say, well, what about the legality of that? We're going to have to figure that out. I don't know. That's not my concern right now. Mm-hmm. I just know that someone who's going to be a doctor typically learns the most when they're doing their apprenticeship. So someone who's trying to be a physical therapist, they typically learn the most when they're on the job. So that stuff will get figured out. If we have to stay away from the medical side of things, we'll stay away from it. If there's a way where we can collaborate, then we're going to make things happen. The one thing that I'm not afraid of is collaborating. I'm not afraid of competition. Like, I would rather collaborate with the competition than them to think that, like, I'm trying to be better than them. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to build $1 billion business. Do you think I could do that alone? Absolutely not. So
that's a pretty interesting concept. So to me, it sounds like you're trying to disrupt the school system. Is that really, like, at least college, the college school system?
And the more and more I voice this out, the more I realize there may be potential to collaborate with the colleges, because what's going to happen is they're going to start losing a lot of money. as they already are. Many of them are. And they're going to have to figure out solutions. What do you do with all that real estate? Do you just tear it down, or do you collaborate with someone who can inspire people? Like, over the next 5 years, I will have to become a celebrity figure. I will have to become someone that people genuinely can't wait to meet. And it's not going to be easy. I do a lot of things like this. I go to a lot of networking events. I was at Wednesday to Friday, I was at 5 networking events. I went to a networking thing on Sunday. I went to a networking event last night, did a webinar last night, doing this podcast today. And it's just constantly doing the little things to get the big win. And yeah, I'll be interested to see how the curriculum goes. I'll be interested to see, hey, what happens with colleges, because I'm not against collaborating with them. I'm not trying to disrupt anything. I'm trying to do what's best for the world. And I call it simple math. I think math gets overcomplicated. I took calculus in high school. I did all that stuff. And I think math is very simple. You got 1 + 1 = 2. Now you got 1 - 1 = 0. 1 - 1 - 1 = -1. So the thing is, if you get more +1s in your life, you're going to figure out how to get in better relationships. Because the conversations that you're having with someone, instead of saying, I can't believe Sue broke up with me, like she did this, this, and this, versus saying, hey, I saw you talk to that girl. I'm just curious, what did you say when you talked to her? Because she was laughing the entire time. Hey, I saw you dancing with that girl and she was smiling the entire time. Would you mind teaching me how to dance? And it applies with wealth too. You get a +1 and you say, hey, I see you built a $10 million business. Someday I hope to be in your shoes. Would you be able to have a 15-minute phone call with me just to help give me a head start? Would you have a book that you recommend? Versus the -1, damn, those wealthy people, like, they just have it all. It must be nice. Like, oh, yeah, I realized one day that just wasn't my fate to be wealthy. But then you have it with health. How about the +1 who's like, hey, I'm going to the gym, you should come with me. Or I'm going to go on a hike, you want to join? Or the -1, you're hungover sitting on the couch. Damn, last night was a blast. Like, I'm just so hungover right now. I can't wait to just sit down and relax.
Yeah.
Like, Kobe Bryant really inspires me because I think alcohol gets a negative reputation. I think it's what people do after they drink alcohol is why there's such a negative reputation. Like me, I love getting drinks with friends. I love the social aspect, but I try not to let that affect my everyday life. And Kobe Bryant tells a story once where he was early on with the Lakers, and he had just had some success, so he was starting to become more of a veteran. And some of the younger guys were coming on board, and they were out there partying, and it was showing in practice. And Kobe said, hey, listen, I don't mind if you guys party. In fact, I'm going to go out with you tonight. I'm going to have some drinks. I'm going to enjoy the night. But I'm going to be there at 5 a.m. in the morning, and you're going to be there too. So he goes out, he has some fun with them, and they show up to practice at 5 a.m. They are dead. Mm-hmm. And Kobe is going hard on them. Like, Kobe is, like, you would never know Kobe was out that night. And after the practice, they go, Kobe, damn, how do you do this? He said, well, you taught me. I typically don't do what you did last night. and he said that really planted a seed from them of like, hey, whatever you do outside of work, don't let that affect what you do inside of work. And so that stuff really inspires me. Like, I try not to let anything I do outside of work affect me. And am I perfect with that? Absolutely not. But I tell people, I say, if you're working inside a business and you are working on a side project, don't for 1 second let that side project affect the commitment that you made to the business that you're in. Still give that business your all, but you have to give your all to the business you're in. And yeah, I mean, I'm saying that all to say that the more positive people that are in your life, the more you'll get those attributes, the more you'll attract the things that you want. The more negative people that come into your life, the more you're going to wish, wonder, think about the regrets that you have because of the conversations and the people you surrounded yourself with. And there's a common quote that says, you are the sum of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And I agree with that for the most part, but I think it should be a lot simpler than that. Like I had positive people, I want you in my life. Negative people, hey, I'm going to be positive around you. If you want to reverse that negativity and start running towards where I'm going, then start running. If you want to stay back, then stay back. I've had people that have came back into my life that are clients now from high school that hadn't been in my life in a while. Why? Because instead of saying, I don't want to be friends with you, I focused on my dreams, I focused on my visions, and that attracted them to want to reach out to me again, want to come to my conferences, want to take a phone call with me. And so I don't believe in cutting people out of your life. I believe if you do the right things, the right people will follow.
Love that. It's very, very good. What would you say is the base level for people then? Is it surrounding yourself with people who are positive? Like, what's the base level of gaining a growth mindset?
Yeah, I mean, not ever, people have a lot of crap going on in their life. I know from personal training, from everything that you've done with your practice and your business over the years, that life's not perfect. However, with that said, it's so much fun being around people who want to get better, even though life may not be perfect. Mm-hmm. I'm in conversations with people all the time that are in tough situations, and here's someone who can help them genuinely reverse that, and yet they want to complain to me. Are you wasting my time? Probably, but you're wasting your time. I was on a phone call with a guy. It was a $750 coaching call. And this guy had a plane. I really want to have a plane someday. And the entire time I'm talking about myself. I looked back at that phone call. I'm just like, are you kidding me, Brandon? You have a guy that has so many of the things that you want, and yet you're talking about yourself the entire time. And he initiates that because he's trying to figure out how to help me. But in the same time, there was things that I wanted to know about him and his story and how he got that I should have just asked. Mm-hmm. But it's just one of those things, how do you know if someone is do you enjoy being around them? Do they add value when you're around them, or are they draining value? One of my mentors says there's thinker doers, washer drainers. Waiter drainers. And they wait for things to happen. Or when there's a conversation going on, they just drain all the energy out of you. And you can't even, it's so hard to think about the good stuff because they're just pounding you about the dinner they had last night, the dinner date that they had. That was absolutely awful. And it's funny because you could talk about a negative experience in a funny way that actually adds value to people. Comedians do a great job at that.
For sure.
So it just depends.
So I know you say you wouldn't cut those people out of your life, but if you have some of those people within your stratosphere, how do you redirect a conversation to be more positive?
They just can't keep up. The reason why you don't have to cut them out is they can't keep up. They can't, you say, my goal is to have $1 billion business. You listen. Most people, they can't even fathom that that's a possibility. So they can't keep up with the conversation. Yeah, I'm working on having an event where I'm trying to get one of the biggest names in America to come in. And they can't fathom that. And then they would rather go back into the conversations about the awful date that they had last night, or the job that they hate, and how the coworker pissed them off. And you keep deteriorating away from that conversation, and there's no clicking. So it's just, why would I want to hang out with that person again? It's on both sides.
Yeah, for sure.
You hang out with complainers, they want to complain. You hang out with people who want to get better, they want to talk about how to get better.
Yeah.
And the two there's a reason why they just don't get along.
It's like two positive ions.
Yeah, and it's, you could still have conversations with them. There's just not going to be a lot of engagement with that. And they just naturally dwindle away. That's the one thing I've noticed. They just naturally dwindle away. But it's so inspiring when those people come back into your life and they cut all that stuff out. Like, we had a lady in our speaker school in Laguna Beach. She has 2 kids, lower 30s, and just got out of a very tough relationship. And she's been getting a lot of slack from the ex's new significant other. And it was just draining her. And I was on a Zoom call, and there was a lady who was on the Zoom call, and she asked this question. And she said, just don't even acknowledge that. Just don't even, anything that has to do with the kids, just say, yes, I'm picking them up. Yes, I'm doing that. But anything else that tries to get dragged on, just don't even acknowledge it. And then she took our speaker school, and I got to know her, and I'm like, wow, this lady has just totally changed her mindset. She said, you know what? I wasn't surrounding myself with the right people, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to be able to get around those right people. Now, just booked her first speaking engagement, and she has a bunch of Instagram Live and podcasts lined up. And people are sharing her stuff. People are rooting for her. People are commenting on her posts. But what she did is she said, sorry, got to get that out of my life. I accept it. I acknowledge it. Got to get it out. Now it's time to move on.
So she came to that self-realization. So anyone out there who currently right now is in that world of talking about the negative things, but they know they want to change, where's their grassroots? Like, where do they start?
Yeah, so get around plus ones. Just get around people like you. Just get around people who want to help, who would be willing to carry you when you need it, and would be willing to show up when you need it.
Yeah.
Though, like, I started having personal development events with a team of no people. And what I started to realize is that a team of people started to show up just based on when I started saying, hey, I'm having this event, and I started promoting it. And I started having a lot of people that would spread the word, that had my back. And A to B Conference 2, we sold 238 tickets. I'm a one-person business.
Yeah.
To be able to do that, I needed a lot of like-minded people. One of the reasons that inspired me to keep doing these conferences, because they are not easy, was that after A to B Con 1, I went to Bradford's, the local bar. My buddy Pablo, who I think is going to be worth $30 million by 30.
Nice.
He walked in with me to that bar. I saw like 15 people that I knew that weren't at my conference, that knew I was having my conference, that didn't show up. I wasn't mad at them at all. I was mad that I didn't bring enough value for them to come. And I told Pablo, I said, listen, this is how hard it is to have conferences. These people are like taking pictures with me. They're giving me hugs. They're dapping me up, and they weren't there. But I said, the people who do show up, I will continue to go out of my way for anything that they want. And I do.
Yeah.
The people who show up to my events, I go out of my way because they go out of their way to come. And that has helped me get the right people in my life, the speaker schools, the conferences. And, you know, when people show up for you, you start to have a lot of respect for them, and you start to realize, hey, this is probably someone that I want in my life. That if people say, hey, Brandon, what's your number one talent? I would probably say it's showing up. And I learned that from Jesse Itzler. He said, if you want to develop long-term relationships, show up, aka console. He said, compliment. Hey, like, this is an awesome facility you have here. Thanks so much for having me. Congratulate. Hey, happy birthday. Hope it's a good one. Hey, so it was your anniversary the other day. Sorry I'm a couple days late, but I hope it was a great one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, compliment, congratulate, console. When I think of console, I think of showing up. Like, hey, when your friend needs you, you show up. When someone's having a tough time, you show up. When someone wants to celebrate a good time, you show up. Can you be perfect with that? Absolutely not. But I can tell you, if you make that a focus, people will continue to have more respect for you. I was at a networking event on Thursday. One of my speaking clients, he was speaking. I go there. Then one of my other clients was having a concert. I show up to the concert. The guy who was promoting it was a long-term client. The guy who was playing, he came to my conference. So the guy who was promoting it, he goes, damn, I can't believe like you showed up. He's like, I can't believe you followed through. The guy who was playing comes up to me, gives me a big hug at intermission. And then I come back to the other event, and then I'm able to talk to the guy who was one of my speaking clients, and I was able to listen to what he thought, give him some feedback. And then I ended up meeting some great other people later that night. So I think showing up is one of the most valuable things you can do in life.
100%, couldn't agree more. So you talk a lot about your conferences. Let's touch base on what those are, what your goal is for those. And you said a couple. You said the AB Con and then the speaker school, right?
Yeah, so right now I'm on a speaker school tour. So we're doing Toronto, August 11th and 12th, Chicago, September 8th and 9th, and then Elite one in New York City for October 6th and 7th. So that's what I'm currently on the road for or doing. I say on the road, but that's fun because you're limited to about 12 people and you're growing together with people over that period of time. So we do a 3-week build up on Zoom, one call a week, and then everyone gets to know each other. Everyone starts to get some repetitions in. Then you have the 2 days intensive in person, and we focus around fun and education. So we take everybody to a comedy show because comedians are the best public speakers, storytellers, in my mind. And then we give everybody a speaker reel because no one wants to see the movie before the preview. Mm-hmm. And we really get them a lot of repetition. A lot of speaker schools focus on the education and a little bit of repetition. We focus on 3 things: education, repetition, and content creation. Most speakers have awful content. So we have a videographer there for 2 days, which is worth the price alone, in my mind, to have a videographer there for 2 days. You probably pay double what you pay just for a speaker school to have a videographer there. And we focus on those 3 things. And then we focus on the fun part too. Like we take them out to dinner, we go to a comedy show. Typically we'll do stuff outside of the room too on one of the mornings. So
very cool. And the concept there is to teach people how to be better public speakers?
Yeah, better leaders, better speakers. My mentor told me, he said, if you can learn how to write and if you can learn how to speak in a way that can communicate a message and inspire people to take the action that needs to be taken, you're going to be able to do some incredible things. So that's why I've written 4 books. That's why now I'm teaching my 12th speaker school, I think. So that's why I've pursued those, is because I know if you can communicate, then you're going to be able to do some things that are far greater than you would have ever imagined. So for me to interview a guy who got a $100 million contract, who Simon Cowell said was the second most talented person he's ever seen, for me to interview him in the hometown, Stamford, Connecticut, was one of the coolest experiences that I've ever had in my life. But there was a lot of work that went into being able to do that. People are like, man, you know how to ask really good questions. Well, there was a lot of work that went into that. And to be able to tell a story in a way that gets people engaged, there's a lot of work that goes into that. There's a lot of awkward moments. There's a lot of having a mic and not knowing what to say. Like to be able to go here and just rip it up for an hour. A lot of people don't see what it was like when I was 18 years old and I would go to a stage that I wanted to speak on every single year. I've traveled down to Orlando, Florida, and I would study the people who were on stage. Not only what they were saying on stage, but I would study them throughout the year. What did they do? What articles were they in? What were they writing about? How were they doing their marketing on social media? I went to an event for 8 years straight in the audience in Orlando, Florida. Didn't miss a year, didn't miss a time going to that stage. The 9th year, I got to speak on that stage.
Wow, very cool.
And it still didn't go perfect. I'll never forget the presenter goes, hey, you got another 5 minutes? But you learn from that stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's really, really cool. I love that. For the A to B Con, what was that? And what really birthed that concept?
Yeah, so I started having the conferences because I knew to have the university, I needed to get around a lot of like-minded people. So I don't recommend doing conferences. A lot of people want to do them. give people advice on what to do. A lot of people don't listen to it. I don't recommend it. Like, if you want to know what it's like to have a conference, you have to be able to devote all your time, energy, and effort towards that. And on top of your responsibilities that you already have. So how is that possible, doing all that? I don't know, but like me, this is my goal. I'm going to go for it. And the reason I have the conferences, because I know that it will lead me closer to my goal. If you're just going to have a conference to have a conference, good luck. Like me, I know if I can do this, it's going to lead to being able to do this with the speaker school. I know if I do this, it's going to lead to these people coming into my life that would have never went. Like, we had some massive people come on to A2BCon 2 on the stage this year. And like, we had 2 guys that I'm pretty sure are worth well over 100 million.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, right in the hometown. And so that was pretty cool. But what inspired me to do that is I knew I needed to figure out how to get people together in a positive way. So I had Map Your Way to Financial Freedom in 2021, A2BCon 2 in 2022, A2BCon 1 in 2022, and then A2BCon 2 in 2023. So, and we're already talking about doing an A2BCon 3 in, I don't know if I should say the date, but we're talking about doing one in potentially May of 2024.
Nice.
So
that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
This is a lot of knowledge here. And, honestly, talking to you, it's really cool to talk with someone who has a vision and is implementing it and executing on it. And the systemization of your mind is very valuable. So people can listen to this and say, wow, that's really cool how he's planning this out and doing it, and really just take a little bit of advice from that. So, thank you for sharing all that. But we'll close this up. If anyone wants to find out more information about you or any of the conferences, or even the Ultimate Golf Fitness Program, if this is still available.
Yeah.
And then some closing thoughts.
Yeah. So if you go to my Instagram, Brendon Gaydorus, then everything's there. There's a link tree in there. I got a comedy show coming up. There's a link to my speaker school. There's a link to all of my books. And there's even a link if you want to have a call with me. There's a link in there. So Instagram's probably the best place. And I'm pretty good with responding back to messages there. And then if I were to leave everybody with one last thing, I was sitting there in my first speaker school, and my mentor had everybody huddle up, and he said, all right, ask any question you have. And I was probably about 25 at the time. And I said, why do most people not get what they want? Because I was taking a lot of time to try and figure out like what was possible, because I was starting to chase success. And I said, why do most people not get it? And he said, Brendon, most people won't get it. Most people don't get it. Most people will lay in bed at the end of their life with regret because they don't go after it fast enough. So if you're listening to this today, if there's something that you're curious about, don't be afraid to reach out to someone who has that, who can help accelerate that process so that you can go after something fast. When I'm talking about going after something fast, I think it's important to understand that if you want to become great at something, it's probably going to take 5 to 10 years to become great. And then if you want to become the best, it's probably going to take 20 to 40 years. And when I interviewed Terry Fader, I was so fascinated. He's like, most people think like, oh, if I take 10,000 hours, I'm going to be great. Yeah, you will. But if you want to become the best in the world, you're probably going to have to devote more time to that. Like I did. I've probably devoted 500,000 hours. And when you actually do the math, that's not possible. But the way he said that really made a lot of sense. Yeah. He's like, I've devoted 50 times more times than the best, or than people who are really good at what they're doing are devoted to. And that was really fascinating to me, how much harder he worked to become the best than people who are phenomenal at what they do.
Fantastic. Really, really solid information. So if anyone's interested, please hit this man up. Thank you very much for coming out. This was awesome. And, it's funny how all these podcasts turn to mindset, but it's so powerful, and we consistently need to be feeding that out into the world.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. Thank you, anybody who listened, and we'll keep growing together.
Heck yeah. Share, give us a comment, follow. Thanks for watching.